stage, on stage with Jim and Tom. On stage, on stage with Jim and Tom. On stage with Jim and Tom. On stage with Jim and Tom. Tom and Jim.
Tonight, we welcome Sierra Camille to the stage of the Phoenix Theater. Sierra is an artist with a variety of specialties. She is an aerialist, she's a theater artist, she's everything in between, and so much more. She has been called an electrifying beam of positivity and happiness in this cynical world. Tonight, we'll get to know what motivates her, what inspires her, what drives her, and later, she'll do a multi-part performance. Please welcome to the program, the very special episode of the program, Sierra Camille.
Welcome.
Why, thank you.
Oh, this is it. This is here. This is now.
Yay.
We've been talking for a long time about this.
It's so true.
I think probably a good place to start is to ask if I hit all of the notes in the intro of what you do as an artist and a performer.
It's a full bag.
Yeah. So
It's true.
I think that it's confusing to people who have no knowledge of the world that you inhabit artistically. So if you could, in your own words, just tell us what you do, I think that would be a good place to start.
Okay. Well, I would say I consider myself to be a theater artist, which is in some ways really all-encompassing, and an aerialist. And I really like to specialize, and I find it very exciting to combine the two and take characters up into the air and do aerial performance that has not only the wow factor, which is also really fun to do. I'll be doing some of both this evening. So that, and then my theater skills include clown and mime is a lot of what I do. And there's a kind of common misconception, maybe not misconception, but people don't always know what I mean when I say that that's what I do. So you'll see some of that in the performance tonight also.
It's got kind of this whole one woman show package to it, and you run through the whole gamut, and it's just a lot of fun to watch.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. It's fun to do too. So
Yeah. I think another good foundational point would be to define what physical theater is. This is a term that I knew very little about prior to looking at your work. So you've introduced me to it, and now maybe perhaps through this program we'll introduce some other people to it.
Yay! I hope so. I mean, physical theater really just refers to theater that is not necessarily based in text. So a lot of plays that are commonly known or seen are like Shakespeare or Arthur Miller, Hamilton, and those are really textually based. So you're like, blah, blah, we're having a conversation, and that's how the story is happening, where with physical theater is more based in the movements that you're doing, and commonly is original work, which is called devised theater. So you could say, I'm a devised physical theater artist, which is a really fancy way of saying I'm a theater artist who creates original work that's primarily not based in text. Which when you do those things, what you're allowing yourself, and you have the ability to play a lot with time and space, which you'll see me do. And I think of that in a way as cartoons. I have a teacher who said that once. He was like, it's kind of like when you watch cartoons, especially old time cartoons, part of the things that are funny and exciting to watch, they stretch time, or they slow things down, or speed things up really fast. And it's so exciting to watch. And as a person, just with your body, you really have the ability to do that. So it's really fun to play with.
You mentioned to me in the lead up to this interview that this whole process of preparing for it felt timely, because you've been exploring a lot of the sort of stuff that we dig into on this show. And I'm curious, why do you think that this has been that sort of an era for you?
A sort of era?
Well, in your personal life, this is an era of self-reflection.
Totally.
This is an era of looking at the art you make and thinking, why do I do it? I'm curious, two-parter, why do you think that is, and what have you learned?
Ooh, good question. Kind of a two-part answer. So I, for a long time as an aerialist, I think because of my background in dance, and I always, in dance class, was always like, I'm not flexible enough, my toes aren't pointed enough, and I'm not skinny enough, and all of those things that everyone has. kind of carried over into my life as a circus performer. And like, I think as artists, and I've been talking to people a lot about this lately, you're always like, the imposter syndrome becomes so real, where you're like, oh, someone's going to find out that I don't actually know what I'm doing, or that like I'm not supposed to be here. But that doesn't really exist in anything, because as artists and as performers, we're all just doing the best we can. And in the world of being an aerialist, I think there can be more pressure, and I've met more, I don't know, people have their own ideas about the way certain things should be. And I have only recently gotten to a point that I'm like, wow, I am good at this. Like, I'm good at the thing that I do, and I am valid to be here, and I don't need to worry. My toes are pointed, my legs are straight. It's fine. I'm good to go. And I think I've spent, because making physical theater is not the norm, there's not a lot of venues to perform it. And aerial is so specific, it has even less venues to perform it, because you're like, hey, what's up? Could I come hang from your ceiling if it's tall enough and can hold enough weight? And maybe you could also pay me. People are like, what are you talking about? You're crazy. Definitely not. But recently I've kind of been reflecting, and I'm like, well, the art that I make isn't that weird. Like, I would like to strive to make art that's even weirder.
Yeah, the weirder the work that you do is, the more the doubt can creep in your darker moments.
Right.
Because you try to look to what other people are doing for validation, and there isn't a lot if you're truly unique, and that can be kind of scary and isolating.
Totally. Yeah. And I just went through a program with someone, Rachel Strickland has this program, the Audacity Project. It's really amazing. And a lot of it was looking at what you really want as an artist and what you really want to be doing. And it's crazy because it's so scary to do that, because you pinpoint what you really want to be doing, and then you're really looking yourself in the face of being like, oh, I can make choices and I can make decisions to make my art the way I want it to be, as opposed to being like, well, there's this opportunity, so I'll just make a thing for that. Or I don't know what's going on, so I'll just do whatever seems like I should do. And to really stop and be like, what do I actually want to be doing is really hard and really rewarding in the end.
You mentioned something earlier that reminded me of a quote I read in the obituary for a journalist named David Carr. I read this on the show like 75 episodes ago. If anybody really remembers it, good for them. I'm going to read it again. It's the last line of his obituary. It's a quote from him. His name was David Carr. He said, "I now inhabit a life I don't deserve," he wrote at the conclusion of his book, "but we all walk this earth feeling that we are frauds. The trick is to be grateful and hope the caper doesn't end anytime soon." That quote stays with me, and it reminds me a lot of what you just said.
That's total, on point.
Yeah, because I don't think you ever shed that sort of doubt. There's always going to be times in your life where you doubt. Would you say that's true?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's funny. It's the second time I remember hearing that statement and thinking, wow, so you mean everybody goes through with that feeling?
Yeah. That's totally.
Everybody knows they're a fraud? Oh, my God.
Yeah. Totally.
And that's why the podcast format is good, because we share human honesty, truth, frailty.
Exactly.
We all feel it. We all feel it. You incorporate a lot of circus culture into what you do, and circus art, you might be able to call it. And this is a world that I think many people aren't familiar with. Could you give us a little primer on that world?
Oh, gosh. Yeah. What a big responsibility. So in the circus world, and this is another thing that you're like, am I an imposter? Am I not? Which I don't feel that way about this anymore, but circus is at a really exciting, I think it's exciting, but it's only been, I'm kind of the first generation of people to have the ability to take recreational circus classes, because traditionally the circus has been passed down through families, and then you learn if you're in the circus and you're in a circus family. And then more recently it's become more popularized, and it's become more, through the internet and through the building of circus gyms, it's kind of like a part of fitness culture, which fitness culture is a big thing right now, like with like CrossFit and parkour and aerial silks and pole dancing and all that kind of stuff. So it's interesting though, because it is a performance art as well as like a athletic feat. And you'll watch performers sometimes. I mean, I must confess, I don't always like to watch aerial performance. I get sometimes bored watching it because some people are the best aerialists I've ever seen technically, but they're not so much performers. And sometimes it's hard to find that balance between the two. But then you have a lot of students who are recreational students right now, which is I teach a lot, and I have all my students are recreational students, which I love. I love teaching recreational students, which is definitely how I started. But there's a lot to go with that because it's a really new thing that exists in our culture. There's questions about insurance and questions about safety and questions about how much regulation should there be for those different things. And ACE is the American Circus Educators Organization. They're a nonprofit, and they're really fantastic. They're kind of the leaders in like putting out not rules, but guidelines for the community to follow. And the circus community doesn't want to have really serious guidelines set in place because it's an art form. And as a teacher, you look at standardized testing. Like, we're not trying to make circus in that vein where you're like, well, I'm a teacher, so I have to teach this thing to everyone. And also, you don't want to give insurance companies something that they can lock onto and be like, you have to teach this thing this way, blah.
What a wild thing. So this new wave of circus performers and interest is then now impacting some of the old school circus families, and everybody's kind of having to change together a little bit because there's more of a spotlight on the whole process, it would seem to me.
Yeah, that's true. And I think it's partly due also to just the existence of the internet and social media. I mean, we see these things happening. So back in the day, like, you wouldn't see the circus and that it existed unless it came to your town. But now you go online and you're like, that's like a video that gets a bunch of hits, is someone doing cool stuff in the air.
You once told me that it's hard to be a physical theater artist in the United States.
Oh, yeah.
I'm curious your thoughts on that and why you think that is.
So a lot of my thoughts on that are, I haven't been to Europe as a physical theater artist, but I have heard and been told, and the history just runs deeper there, that people are much more aware of the existence of physical theater, and it has a lot more support financially and just culturally. One of my same teacher who I talked about before has said, in Europe, if you tell someone you're a clown, they ask where you went to school, and in the United States, they ask you why. And it's totally true. Like, I tell people, I don't anymore be like, I'm a performer, I'm a clown, because people are like, oh, cool, you go to birthday parties and tie balloon animals and you put on a white face, and that's some of what clowning is. But clowning is really, really about the human experience and sharing that through failure, largely, and being able to laugh at yourself. And clowning is like the hardest performance work I've ever done, because you are just so closely examining your own self and your own failures and making fun of them, and also trying to make a connection with the audience. It's so fun though, and people really love it.
You say that it's you're trying to fail in a realistic way, but that's more than just like running in and like falling, right? Because like when you watch you do a clown performance, like you could just like have it be punched in on your face. You know what I mean? Like what you do with your face is like a second act altogether.
It's a whole thing.
And that's a wild thing, because it captures almost like, and excuse me if this is the wrong way to put it, because it feels weird to say, but I think a clown act done right, and this is from a total novice, total outsider, captures like the grotesque humanity of a person.
Exactly. That's exact. Yes, you're correct.
Okay.
Very good.
Yeah.
Jim.
Because there's sadness there. I mean, go ahead. Tell me what you think about that.
I mean, and I think that's totally spot on. And there's so many different types of clowns. Like, they're not always just failing. You can be making fun of someone. You could be a power clown or a weakness clown. It's all different. It totally depends on the person. But that is totally what it's all about, is that the really humanity.
Yeah. I was hesitant to refer to you as a clown in the intro, because I thought, I don't know. I mean,
it packs a lot of punch for people.
Are people going to get it? Is she going to be okay with that?
Get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and people expect when they hear the word clown, they're going to see the nose, they're going to see the white face,
exactly.
And actually, and that's not necessarily the case. There's a piece you do about the first day of school. Mm-hmm. And it is just one of the best examples of how your face works.
Oh.
And how you communicate the human condition in that very last look, in the very last scene. Is just, it says so much.
Let's talk about
without
that.
a word being
Thanks.
spoken. And it's very poignant.
Is that
thank you.
first love?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So respond to that if you don't mind, and then if you wouldn't mind giving us background on that piece, because that piece has a lot going on
A
there.
lot going on.
In
That
your personal
piece-
life as well.
Yeah, totally. That piece is I think it's so fun and I think it's so funny, and I had a hard time creating it because I was just busting up in laughter making it, and then when I would first perform it, I think it's so funny.
And what is the piece?
But this piece is called First Love, and it's about it's a true story of my first couple days of high school and meeting my first boyfriend, Joshua James Jackson, who's been on the show many times.
Tied for first place on the show, in fact.
who's-
number of
who's the
appearances.
other?
Well, we don't need to go into
Oh
that.
well,
Yeah.
But
But no,
yes,
he's a friend of the Sonoma County music scene. He's a
Yeah.
friend of ours. He's a fiance of yours.
He's a fiance of mine.
Yeah. And we've been watching him on this stage for longer than I care to remember at this point.
Totally. That piece, First Love, is really, I mean, it's just the true story of Josh and I meeting when we're 14 and silly teenagers, and I guess it's kind of self-explanatory.
It's and so it just basically, it's like they meet and then they're hesitant and then they ask one of them asks the other on a date and then they go to the movie, they make out in the movie, the mom is a character in it, then they have sex and that's kind of fun. And then at the end, I think
Which, by the way, the mom probably doesn't know until she sees this piece.
I know.
The face you're talking about is at the end, like a parent almost comes in while you're having sex. Is that what it is? And you like stand up.
Yeah.
But it also that look is it may have been outward towards a parent walking in, but there was so much inward going on with that look as well. At least that's what I got. It just wow.
And what was inward about it?
Because here's a girl that has just gone through a first experience. This is a life moment. And it just was. I think it was a universal look. It was wow. Was that good? Was that not good? Am I happy? Am I not happy?
Oh, I'm so glad. That's so great.
Did I feel it? Do I not feel it? Yeah,
Yes.
it was. It just grabbed me.
Oh, thanks. I actually just changed that ending a little bit, so I'm glad, because the end of the piece is actually like a little bit different than what actually happens in real life.
Well, yeah, but I think that quick moment occurs every day in this country, probably every day in this world.
Totally.
Absolutely. And that look, I think, captures it.
And I would just add that if you don't watch the performance and you just listen to this interview, you should know that there's no music accompaniment. There's no anything. It's just Sierra on the stage, and she's on the ground, and she's on standing up, and she's running back and forth, and she's voicing all the characters, and so that gives you a glimpse into the sort of art that Sierra makes.
Physical
Yeah.
theater.
And I love the point that you just made, because you're right. How many times have we all had an experience that was unique to that point in our life, and you don't even really have use for adjectives? You're just like, wow, that happened.
Right.
Yes.
Wow, that happened. I'm overwhelmed with the fact that just happened.
Yeah. Especially when you're a teenager. I feel like you're like just overwhelmed all the time.
Yeah. It's actually a wonderful feeling that I think happens less for people as they get older. And it's a really beautiful one.
Yeah.
To be able to like just be driving from point A to point B, thinking about something that recently happened, to be like, wow, that happened.
And
I have no commentary for it. All I can say is it happened.
when I was a teenager, my number one word was everything was so intense.
Yeah.
So intense all the time. All the time.
That's an example of it.
Yeah.
Well, all I can say is thank you so much for coming on the
thank
show.
you so much.
Tom and I are both big fans of what you do. We've seen you
Thank
do it
you.
at a number of shows because you accompany a lot of bands that you know. And, I just appreciate the energy that you put into it, and especially what you've put into curating the performance and the discussion of the performance here tonight.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for being a part of
It's
it.
totally my pleasure. So much fun. So fun.
And if you, the listener, would like to see the performances of
stick
Sierra
around and watch
Camille,
this.
Watch them.
and you have to go to the Onstage with Jim and Tom YouTube channel. They will all be on there.
Yeah.
You should probably subscribe to the channel. But if you're opposed
Clearly.
to that for some reason, just search Onstage Sierra Camille, and the full set of performances
she will be.
await you.
Yeah.
Sierra, you are great, and it
Yeah.
has been
Thank you so
Awesome.
much.
and it has been a pleasure to do this with you.
So fun.
One more time, thanks again for joining us
Thank you.
tonight.
Thank you.